Welcome back to Bailey Built. My name is Ian, and right here in this garage, I'm building a 1975 Chevrolet C10. And in this episode, we're going to talk about some of the issues I had with the rear end. We're also going to get a new drive shaft, and we're going to install that drive shaft. Okay, so the first problem that I had was my fill plug. When the rear end was done, the rear end shop did not take out this internal wrenching fill plug that was factory on this truck. When it was powder coated, the powder coated locked in the fill plug, and I had to actually weld a socket on it to get it out. I've now installed, which I think was a 1/2-inch NPT external wrenching fill plug, and I have that on now. Let me tell you, that took a while to do, and I did kind of gnarl some of this up right here, but I did get it done. If you get a rear end done and you get it powder coated, green, black, whatever, you want to make sure that fill plug is taken out and that's masked off. After getting the fill plug problem fixed, I went down to a drive shaft shop with some measurements, and they built me a drive shaft. When I had the rear end done, I made sure that they did the rear end and built it to withstand at least 600 horsepower. So when I went to the drive shaft guy, I asked for the same thing. I needed a 600 horsepower rated drive shaft. Unfortunately, he told me right away that the U-joints on the new drive shaft are going to need to be a little bit bigger than my factory. Factory U-joints are 1310 U-joints, and I'm going to need to go with a 1350. Unfortunately for me, yoke on the rear end was still the factory yoke, which was a 1310 U-joint. I had to buy a larger yoke, as you can see right down in here, that gave me the 1350 U-joint. The drive shaft shop ended up ordering me a new yoke, and when I received that, the yoke did not have this dust cover right here. So I went back, I tried to explain to him that I wanted one with the dust cap. He explained to me, no, you don't need it. A lot of guys don't run that. I really wanted that. So he did spend some time, and he did actually find a yoke with the dust cap made by Spicer. That part number for the yoke is 3-4-8691-1X. So that yoke, which is right here, is going to have a dust cover, and it's going to be for the 1350 yoke right here. Now, if you're going to change out your yoke with a larger diameter U-joint, the rear seal that's behind here is going to need to be a lot larger. So the seal that goes around this part right here, on the new one, that's a lot larger. So that seal needs to be changed. I ended up getting the seal. The seal is made by National Oil Seals, and that part number was 8622. So my drive shaft guy built the drive shaft with the U-joints, and he ordered me the new yoke. I installed that. You'll see that here in the video. And then the last thing I needed was these brackets. So the brackets came from a company called Nepco, and that part number is 10019. It's just the 2 brackets and the 4 bolts to finally bolt this back part of the drive shaft onto this yoke. Couple of pitfalls I had to deal with, but ultimately I got it done. I hope that this information helps you navigate through a drive shaft and a rear end if you decide to do something like I'm doing. With that said, let's get into the install. I now have the rear yoke painted, and there's some areas on here that we don't want to get paint on, so I did mask those off. So we're just going to unpeel all this tape, and I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so here it is. We basically don't want to get paint on this area right here where the brackets sit. We definitely don't want to get paint into this area right here. That's where the U-joint sits. We definitely don't want to get paint inside here. It sits on the input shaft of the rear end. And the back here, there's a seal that's going to go around here, so we don't want any of this painted. So now that that is painted and it's ready for install, we're going to go ahead and install it. So let's do it. Okay, so here we are at the back of the truck on the rear end, and the next step that I need to do is I need to install this rear seal. I did take a razor blade and clean off silicone right here. take a rag with a little bit of cleaner on here. We're just going to clean that up real nice right here. And then I think what we're going to do is we're going to take a little bit of RTV and we're going to put some on the seal. So here we go. So we've got some, basically some RTV around the edge of this seal, and I'm going to slide this on, okay, and then we're going to start smacking it in position. There we go. Okay. I finally got it smacked in just right, or a bite, so. Okay. Just get it locked in. Okay, there's a seal, that's in. I just want to slightly lubricate this seal in here so it slides in neatly. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to take a little dab of some all-purpose grease, slide it onto there. All right, let's see if I can get it from this side. Oh, shit. There we go. That's in. We're going to put on that washer, and then we have this nut right here. But before we put on this nut, we're going to put on some thread sealer. That might be a little bit too much. All right, okay, here we go. Forward. All right. All right, get this onto here. And that's it right there. Okay, that's how to put on the this rear seal and the yoke. That's how we're going to do that. So the next step is to put in the drive shaft. Okay, so the next step is to pretty much install the drive shaft. I'm going to slide the drive shaft into the transmission first. I'm going to use my floor jack to pick up the center carrier bearing and get the bolt started. And then I should be able to then finally mount the back part of the drive shaft onto the rear end. So this is how it's done. Okay, so we have the drive shaft now slid into the transmission. Now that we have that sitting there, I'm going to go ahead and start the bolts for the center support carrier bearing. All right. And what I'm doing is basically I'll do a bolt with a washer on the top side going down, and then from underneath I'm going to go ahead and put a flat washer, a lock washer, and a nut. All right, I'm going to scoot you a little closer to the rear end side of things, so you can kind of take a look at what we're going to do right back here. So here we go. We got the looks like got the brackets right here. and the bolts, and now I just need to bolt up this rear U-joint onto the yoke. I'm being careful with this U-joint back here, because the one thing I don't want is these bearing caps to fall off. It should be packed with bearings, so I feel like it's gonna stay right there. Okay, this is a looks like a 5/16. So I'm hoping this is gonna work. Yes. Let's let that air out and see how it looks. It's quite the aggressive angles of some drive shaft right here. So, well, the good news is that it fit. That's the good news. Okay. I think that's going to do it for today. Okay, here we are. After getting the new yoke in and putting on the new seal, some of the rear end fluid had drained out, so we're going to fill this back up. I've already removed the fill plug that's right here, and the next step. Okay, again right here we're using this gear oil that's recommended from the rear end guy for this differential that's in there. Cut the tip open. It's funky. All right, so here we go. I bought another bottle. That's full. Okay. And then let's feed it like a baby. All right. Here we go. Ah, she's thirsty. A little bit coming out. I just need this fill plug, and of course the plug that we're running here is one that has a magnet on it, right? So when this guy breaks in, if there's any little bit of metal shavings as things are breaking in, the idea is that we're going to just catch that stuff. So let's go and get him started in there. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to snug this guy up. I feel like that's pretty good. All right, that now completes this part of the install. Okay, so here we are underneath the truck. And the last thing that we have to do for this drive shaft is tighten up the bolts. I've got two bolts right here that I got to tighten up for the center support carrier bearing. I also need to tighten up the transmission mount bolts that mount directly to the transmission cross member. And I also need to tighten up the adjustable arm for the transmission mount. So let's go ahead and do that right now. Okay, here we go. On the carrier bearing right down here, I'm using grade 8 bolts. It's 11/16, and I'm running a lock washer underneath. Here we go. Okay, so now that all the bolts are tightened up, I'm gonna just put a done stamp on the drive shaft. Transmission mounts all tightened up. The adjustable brackets tightened up. So is the center support carrier bearing down here. That's all tightened up. So we're good. We're going to move on to the next thing. I want to thank you for tuning in and watching these videos as I go through the build of this truck. Each one of these videos I try to put out as quickly as I can, but ultimately I got to focus on this build. So with that said, this video is going to wrap up my season 1. Ultimately just getting this truck to a rolling chassis with a motor, rear end, drive shaft, suspension. We're now going to move on into season 2. And I hope you stay tuned because we're going to be doing things like Holley EFI. We're going to be doing the ride height sensors. We're going to be doing the airlift. We're going to wrap up the brake lines. We're going to do all the plumbing and ultimately get to the cab, the interior, the gauges, everything. So stay tuned. More videos to come.